Most people believe that when life slows down, it means they are falling behind. But Scripture shows the opposite is often true. Delay is very often the clearest sign that a major turning point is near. And if you feel like things are no longer moving the way they used to, it may be because you are closer than you think to what God has been preparing all along. I'm not saying this to comfort you, but to wake you up. Many people walk straight past the most important season of their lives simply because nothing looks dramatic on the surface. This video will help you recognize where you truly are, understand what may be forming behind the silence, and, most importantly, learn how not to miss a moment that only comes a few times in a lifetime. You know, in every person's life, there are moments that feel different. Not dramatic, not loud, but quietly heavy inside. Life keeps moving the same way it always has. You wake up in the morning. You go through familiar routines. You do what you've done for years. And yet, deep down, something feels unsettled, as if one chapter is slowly closing, even though you can't yet see what the next one looks like. Have you ever felt that way? Many people I've spoken with over the years, especially those in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, say almost the same thing to me. I don't know why, but it feels like something is changing, not around me, but inside me. And after many years walking with people in their spiritual journeys, studying Scripture, and serving communities across the United States, I can say this with confidence. That feeling is not accidental. In the Bible, there are moments often described as thresholds. Not quite an ending, not yet a beginning, but a space in between. A place between what is familiar and what is unknown. Between comfort and faith. Between holding on and letting go. What we're talking about today centers around a season like that. A year many people sense is different. The year 2026. Not because a number has power on its own, but because patterns we see again and again in Scripture seem to be converging in this moment. Throughout biblical history, God rarely does something new with a loud announcement. Before he delivered Israel, they lived in Egypt for a long time. Before David became king, he lived years in hiding. Before Joseph was lifted up, he sat in a prison cell. There is a pattern here. No one steps into a new season without first passing through a time of uncertainty. A time when things feel slow. A time when people begin to ask, where is God? Why hasn't anything changed yet? Did I miss my moment? I remember a friend of mine, a retired engineer in California, once said this to me. I spent my whole life managing, planning, staying in control. And then one day, I realized I wasn't anymore. At first, it terrified me. Later, I realized it might be an invitation to trust. That insight stayed with me, because this message isn't meant to stir fear. It's an invitation to move beyond a comfortable, predictable faith and into a deeper place where control loosens and trust begins to grow. When someone stands at a threshold in life, the hardest part is often not moving forward, but accepting that there are things from the past that cannot be carried any further. I have met many people at this stage of life who carry a quiet inner conflict. On one hand, they believe in God. They pray. They read the Bible. But on the other hand, they are still holding tightly to things that helped them survive for decades. Old ways of working, old ways of thinking, familiar fears, and even past successes. Have you noticed this? Sometimes the hardest things to let go of are not failures, but the things that once worked well enough for an earlier season. In Scripture, there is a pattern that appears again and again. God does not usually take people straight from hardship into fulfillment. He leads them through the wilderness first. The wilderness is not a place of destruction. It is a place where everything unnecessary is stripped away, so only what truly matters remains. The people of Israel were delivered from Egypt in a single night, but they spent 40 years in the wilderness, not because God was slow, but because their hearts and minds were not yet ready for freedom. I once heard an older pastor in Texas say something that stayed with me. God can change your circumstances quickly, but changing the way you see the world usually takes time. That has proven true for many of us. You may have been praying for change for years, for healing, for financial relief, for peace in your family, or simply for peace in your own heart. And at some point, the question begins to surface. Why hasn't anything happened yet? Did I do something wrong? Let me say this to you clearly and gently. Delay does not mean denial. Very often it means deeper preparation. A psychologist friend of mine once explained it this way. In the second half of life, people are no longer shaped primarily by achievement, but by meaning. We stop asking, "What did I accomplish?" and begin asking, "Why does this matter?" Scripture calls this spiritual maturity, and this brings us to the first truth we need to understand here: supernatural provision. Many people hear that phrase and immediately think of money. But in the Bible, provision is not about excess. It is about sufficiency at the right time. Elijah had no stored supplies, no long-term plan. Each day, he depended entirely on what God provided that day. That is difficult for people who are used to planning, managing, and staying ahead. But it also frees the heart from fear. Have you noticed how the more we try to control everything, the more anxious we become? Studies on stress in older adults consistently show that the deepest anxiety does not come from lack, but from the feeling of losing control. Faith does not deny reality, but it shifts our foundation. We stop relying mainly on what we can secure and begin relying on the one who holds us. When the foundation changes, the way we live changes too. That is when the second truth begins to surface: spiritual authority being awakened. Not authority to dominate others, but authority to remain steady when circumstances try to overwhelm us. I have met people with little physical strength and no public influence, yet when they prayed, the atmosphere in the room changed. Not because they spoke loudly, but because they spoke from a deep place of alignment with God. When Peter said, "Rise up and walk," he was not speaking from emotion or confidence in himself. He was speaking from unity with God's will. That kind of authority is not formed overnight. It is shaped in the wilderness. And then we arrive at the third truth, the one many people long for most: divine acceleration. When Scripture speaks of acceleration, it is not the world's version of fast success. It is more like a dam breaking open. The water has been gathering for a long time, and when the moment comes, it moves all at once. Joseph was not promoted step by step. He was elevated in a single day. But that day only came because he was ready. God does not accelerate the unprepared. Acceleration without readiness is not blessing. It is damage. That is why so many people find themselves in seasons that feel slow. Not because they are being left behind, but because they are being strengthened. If you feel like you have waited long enough, if you feel like you have learned the lessons, if you feel tired of holding everything together by your own strength, you may be closer to a turning point than you realize. The real question is not, When will God act? The question is, if He moves quickly, will I be ready? The remainder of this message will not promise easy answers, but it will help you discern what needs to be released, what needs to be held, and what needs to be prepared, so that when the door opens, you are not just able to see it, but able to walk through it. There is one thing I want you to remember as this message comes to a close. God is never in a hurry, but He is never late. Many of us have spent years living with the feeling that we have to keep up with time, keep up with responsibility, keep up with expectations from others and from ourselves. But in the spiritual life, God never asks, "Did you move fast enough?" He asks, "Did you walk in the right direction?" If you are in a season where things feel slower than they used to, or even stalled, please don't rush to the conclusion that you are falling behind. It may be that you are being held back, so you don't miss what is coming next. In Scripture, the most important moments rarely arrive in noise. Moses did not hear God in the crowd, but on a quiet mountain. Elijah did not encounter God in the wind or the earthquake, but in a gentle whisper. And many decisions that change a lifetime come in moments that seem ordinary at first. Let me ask you something honestly. If God is whispering to you right now, are you quiet enough to hear Him? After many years of walking alongside people, I've learned this. Most of us are not afraid that God isn't speaking. We are afraid of what He might ask us to change. Change the way we see things, change our habits, change what we hold on to for security. But think about this. God never takes something away to leave you empty. He makes room so He can give you something better. You may not be able to see the whole road ahead. Very rarely does God show us everything at once, but He always gives enough light for the next step. And sometimes that next step is small, not dramatic, not impressive, just a quiet decision to trust a little more, to release a little more, to obey a little more. If there is one truth I hope you carry with you after this video ends, it is this. You are not lost. You are not late. And your life is not outside of God's plan. The years you thought were delays may have been years of foundation, and strong foundations are never rushed. As you step toward 2026, don't move forward with fear, as if you must catch up. Move forward with trust, knowing you are being guided. If something in your heart was stirred today, don't dismiss it. Hold it, reflect on it, pray about it, and allow God to continue speaking in His own quiet way. Let me leave you with this. Faith does not mean we never doubt. Faith means we keep walking, even when questions remain. If you are standing at a threshold in your life right now, whatever name you give it, age, circumstance, or simply a feeling within, remember this. A threshold is not meant to be a place where you stay forever. It exists so you can cross it, and you do not cross it alone. Walk slowly, walk honestly, and walk with the confidence that the one who brought you this far will not leave you behind. We do not need to know everything about tomorrow. We only need enough trust to step into it, and that is enough.